Okay. And welcome once again to Youth Rugby Discussion, a podcast focusing on youth rugby union, mostly focused in New England in the US. We are a collection of current and past coaches, administrators, parents, basically folks involved in youth rugby, interested in youth rugby, growing youth rugby. Also, although some of us may sit on various boards, we don't speak for that. This show does not speak for those boards. We're just individuals hanging around, enjoying discussion. So please join us today. We're going to be discussing. We're going to continue the discussion on resources. Just there was so much to mine that we needed to go on and continue with that. So let's go down the top again so that we can associate names to voices from the top down. Alan, can you say hi?
Hi, yes, I'm Alan, as Coach Daniel said, and I coach the Rentham Barbarians.
Hey, this is Chris. I am not much of a coach now. I'm rugby dad. I'm a rugby parent. Oh, and I've got a kid here with me as well.
Yeah, I'm Skylar, high school rugby player, Boston Irish Wolfhounds.
And I am Daniel Mejia. I'm coaching for Rentham right now and having an awesome time.
Jeff Karras, former player, now a dad and a coach and an administrator with Rugby Rhode Island.
And I'm Kate McCabe, and I'm a coach of a high school team in Belmont, Massachusetts.
Awesome. So let's just jump right into it. I think there were some things that we maybe have brought up but didn't have a chance to really dig deep into. Chris, do you want to get us going with something?
Yeah, just a little bit of a recap last week. Last week we covered books. That was a big part of what we talked about with the way that books influenced our coaching, maybe bouncing some ideas off each other about some of the books that we've read in the past. And we started to get into some websites. We talked about a couple. We grazed the surface. I think we're going to talk about a little bit more. But where I left off is I really wanted to mention Positive Coaching Alliance. The reason is because last week when I mentioned books, I mentioned a book that sort of changed the way that I think about the game. I was so disappointed in myself for not having read it earlier, Total Rugby. And then when I got linked in with Positive Coaching Alliance, it changed the way that I think about coaching, and not about rugby. I actually USA Rugby did have a partnership with Positive Coaching Alliance. They are one organization that partnered with them. And I think I actually got it from coaching soccer. But what it does is just really matured me as a coach about what matters most. And I think it's worth checking out for everyone, right? So the idea there with positive coaching, it says it in the name, though, is they want positive coaches, right? And they're sort of maybe their trademark term is dual goal coaches, right? Somebody who has a goal. Yes, you can have a goal to win, but you also want to have a goal to grow a player and to or to have fun, or to to have an inclusive environment. And so honestly, I was pretty immature when I was a younger coach, and I didn't realize as a kid, I didn't realize how important it was to to uh to have a positive influence to have a positive attitude for kids. I think I grew up getting yelled at all the time by coaches, and it really changed the way that I act as a coach and also as a parent. So it's definitely worth a check out. There's a couple things. I'm going to pause there for anyone who also has anything to say about it, and then I'll just go on a little bit about what it is, what resources on that website did I use, to sort of that made me feel so passionate about it.
I kind of want to amplify what you just said. I've in terms of the positive impact you can have on players. I think it's remarkably hard to start and to work out what to do, but once you've cracked the code that it's actually really just about making all the kids feel good about themselves and their performances go off as a consequence, it actually becomes very easy to go and literally watch a kid play and then just find something positive to say when they come off beating themselves up, having made some inane mistake, which of course everyone would make, but they haven't played rugby for 20 years, so they don't realize that everyone makes that mistake. And just being able to give them a little positive, it's incredible seeing their heads turn. So yeah, I think positive coaching is so important, and it's so trivial and easy to berate people, and it's so not valuable to do it.
Right, and it's just as easy to encourage them, right? It's just as easy to sort of use maybe a little bit of a mistake as in a positive light, as it is to be in berating, as you mentioned, right? And it sort of gets a little bit to what we were talking about last week about culture, or 2 weeks ago now, about culture. It just and it's a culture that sort of builds on itself. You can hear on the sidelines with you and your co-coaches just and maybe one of the most famous phrases in the sports world is to say "let's go" instead of "come on," right? And it's like you don't say when something happens, you don't say "come on," you say "let's go," and just sort of just word choices, just attitude, and even inflection in your voice changes that can make a lot of difference in the world, whether or not a team is sort of ascending and positive versus a team that's sort of negative and descending. So on that note, though, I gotta say that so as I got introduced to Positive Coaching Alliance in one of my coaching certifications, whether it was or both rugby and soccer or both, and so I got linked in with it, and I think and they offer courses, they offer some help with bigger organizations to help develop their coaches, which is what they did with I think it was U.S. Soccer. And then, but once I got linked in with them, one of the best things they had is that I got a weekly video. It was just maybe a 2-minute video in my email inbox. I click on it, I spend 2 minutes, and it was always just this nice, simple idea. You just click on it. And it's just somebody like Doc Rivers or some famous coach just connecting with you real quick and saying, "Hey, do this for the kids. This is a simple thing that you can do to have a positive influence on a kid, one way or another." And those 2-minute videos were like gold, right? And it was just once a week. Now nowadays you can go on YouTube and you can just stream them all day long. You just click on Positive Coaching Alliance on YouTube, or you can go to the Positive Coaching Alliance website and watch these videos. But like, I mean, it's so simple. Just a 2-minute message takes no time out of your day. Sort of reinforces positive coaching. It gives you another idea about building a positive culture. It was such an easy thing to do, and so impactful for me as a young coach. And
It's interesting, as I say, it's interesting that the concept of 2 minutes or 1 minute is born out in business as well. The 1 Minute Manager is a very old business management book on how to communicate with your staff, and it's the same thing. Spend a minute saying positive things. If you have something that you need to give corrective guidance on, spend a minute doing that and no more.
yeah, right. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we the Blanchard book probably even worth mentioning last week about culture and feedback and a positive environment. So one other thing about Positive Coaching Alliance, if you're interested, they have this sort of like relatively cheap webinars, right? And again, they're put on by top notch. I want to say experts, but top notch, like famous, respectable folks in the industry giving these top notch webinars. They're $20, $30, something like that. If you wanted to donate, but then sort of support their cause, and you can get a lot more information from those. They also the guy who runs that, who sort of developed Positive Coaching Alliance, Jim Thompson. He's wrote several books that are available. I can't say that I read them, but they're also available since we're on the topic of resources. So I think that's it on for me on Positive Coaching Alliance. I think that keeps it relatively brief, but I can't stress enough how much it impacted me as a young parent and a young coach.
Sorry, I've been so quiet because I've actually been like looking at this website. And it is very cool. Like some of the courses that you can sign up to take. And again, you're right, it's like $30, but they have like a little online course that's Phil Jackson and Julie Foudy and Shane Bettier. Like this is cool. These are cool athletes that are kind of talking about culture and practices and games, and I don't know, that's awesome to see that kind of representation and like the ability to access it from home.
Yeah, I think it gives it a lot of credibility, and these folks are in it. These folks are in it. It appears to me that they're volunteering their time because they feel so strongly about positive coaching. And again, a lot of really just good ideas, a lot of reflections. And while there is those those courses for relatively low money. Those 2-minute videos, 3-minute videos, or even longer ones are free on YouTube, right? So you can check it out. You can check it out yourself and see what you think yourself. I wasn't able to find the subscription that I used to have, where I could get a weekly newsletter, but I suspect it's still out there because it was way too cool to not have.
So Chris, I was looking at this also, and I'm loving this from a number of different ways. And Kate, I have to just echo what you just said. I was just looking at the video section. I'm kind of displaying it here right now. So it looks like here's is the place to start. Go to these videos right here. It says if you have no experience with PCA, this is a course for you. $30. If you're interested, that's that. It, it's I don't want to say it's not a lot of money, but I mean you could be spending a lot more money to be able to get. And this tying into what Chris said. The second thing that I really liked. What Chris said is, this is not a resource if you're a coach and you're looking for the next drill to help you work on your club's X, Y, and Z deficiency, or to make your club a little bit stronger in a particular technique or skill. This is how to make you as a coach more, well, definitely more effective, but definitely more bring your coach awareness up significantly and start actually coaching as opposed to being more of a trainer. um, and Chris, I had the same experience that you did. I fell into coaching because I happened to be the player who knew more than everybody else when we didn't have a coach, and making the realization, blundering through understanding that there's a big difference between helping to train a team and then understanding that the role of the coach is significantly different. Like it almost doesn't really matter what sport you're coaching. There's a significant um, there's a whole universe that you can bring into a team of people, be it professional or not, to help build culture, as you said, but get to it's an overused statement or saying of the sum of its parts. But I really like that you were talking about how you felt like seeing this help you make the next step in your coaching. So if that's where you're finding yourself as a coach right now, or you're looking for resources to help you do that, this looks like this is fantastic. And $30 just to find out if this is something that's really going to plug in with you well. And the other thing that I like is, Chris, it seems like they've been using methodology that is conducive to sort of online training, right? This is remote training, and right now, the way the world is right now, a lot of people are jumping into the online training or trying to do things remotely. Oh, hold on, I got noise in the background.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Daniel. As you're talking about that, it just so happens that now is the time that we can have that the online training matters most. It's most impactful. And I will say one thing while we're off here too. I want to mention that again, this had a really big impact of me when I had young kids playing as well, and I realized, I realized some of the things that I was doing that wasn't the best for the kids. Even if I thought it wasn't the best for the kids. So I think if you found yourself with maybe a young coach, or early in your career, this is good for everyone, but if you found yourself a young coach that maybe hasn't learned about positive coaching yet, or if you found a parent who maybe you preferred that would calm down on the sideline, or something like that, this would be a subtle way to tell a parent or a young coach, hey, go check out this website. Go, give it a serious thought, and it might sort of this might sort of modify their behavior in a positive way. Just an idea I just have. I've never tried that myself, but it just seems like a nice subtle way to redirect somebody who's maybe on the wrong path.
But you've just given that away now, Chris. So we're all wise to that. When you say, "Hey, Alan, I think you really need to go start listening to that positive coaching," it's like, really? Am I yelling here? Did I throw my jacket down or something?
I will say that this actually makes me think about what Jeff was saying last time, which was like, how when you're building programs, part of you wants maybe like a teacher or someone that can like break down, that can like break stuff down for kids, right? Maybe not the rugby expert that you can corral into a team to be the coach, but you also need someone that can break things down and connect with kids specifically. And this seems like a good way to maybe like take that rugby expert that's volunteering their time to be a coach for kids and say, hey, we all need to like reframe our mindset to make sure that this is an experience that makes all these kids want to continue growing in rugby.
So I was a I was a den leader for Cub Scouts, and it was the most frustrating thing in the world because the kids wouldn't listen, and I had these programs all set up, and they were all first graders, and they're running all over the place, and it wasn't hurting anybody, but it was driving me crazy, and I had a really hard time, and that's this is part of it. It's I was trying to teach something, but I didn't capture them, and one of the things I thought that was really neat that the Free Jacks did last weekend or weekend before, last weekend, was they had really good games and it was all very positive. And they learned tasks and they were taught tasks and the kids were built up as they went. It was a very, very positive event. So I was thinking the exact same thing. It's not just the teaching part, but it's also building the kids as you show them something new. And the kids all want to do well. There's a certain amount of trepidation because they don't want to get hurt, particularly with bigger kids in high school. And so I think we underestimate the extent to which coaches can, they like to be big and tough and bad, particularly in a rough sport like rugby, but that's not what the kids need. They need to learn and they need to be brought forward in a positive way.
I absolutely agree.
I'd still never be a den leader again.
Yeah, that was pretty challenging. I did it myself. That was pretty challenging. All right, so yeah, it looks like we could talk about this website for a lot more, and particularly what it does and what it represents and what its mission statement is, what it's trying to do, what you can get out of it. I'll be honest, this was brought up last week, but we didn't drill into it, so I kept it on my radar. But now I am going to go and I'm going to take that first course just to see what it's like. I've the $30. Yeah, I could waste it in something else. I'd rather use it in something like this. So Chris, thanks. This is really cool.
Yeah, good deal. I'm glad to share it. I hope it has a meaningful impact on the kids
and the coaches.
Yeah, eventually it drills down. Eventually goes down. All right. Yeah. So thanks again, Daniel, because we didn't quite get to it last week, and I thought it was worth kind of spilling over to this week. The rest of the things that I wanted to bring up are are not as impactful. I don't think there's much on that way, but I do want to share a couple other websites that we've used. We did talk about the rugby site. I don't know if we want to revisit that. It may be the best of the lot when it comes to drills. It's kind of like what we talked about with Positive Coaching Alliance with top-notch rugby players teaching you a drill. It's just focused on drills and skills. So I don't know if we've got any more on the rugby site. We talked about it last week. If there's anything else, but if not, I would just move on to a couple other ones that I want to bring to our attention on the rugby drills and coaching type thing.
No, we talked about it last time. I agree, but that is the one that I use the most often is the rugby site. So I can't say enough about it. It's good.
Well, what's funny is you guys just presented the two sites that can bring quite a bit into the spectrum that are kind of on the, I don't want to say the opposite sides of the spectrum, but one covers kind of the tactical, the other one covers the strategic, one covers, this rugby site kind of handles okay, I need something to do this practice because, last game we had a problem with X, Y, and Z. Let me go into rugby site and figure out, how to break it down and what I can use and bring into my next, practice. The Positive Coaching Alliance seems like it's a much, broader overarching thing. So I love that we have these two juxtaposed to one another, which kind of, help, kind of building blocks and standing up a coach, right?
There's a third angle as well, though, I think, just to break your juxtaposition.
Got it.
So, I mean, again, let me repeat what you just said, Daniel, but add the third thought in. So you have positive coach alliance, which is how to communicate, how to build the right atmosphere, how to build the kids up so they, strive to be their best and achieve the most they can. Then there's things like the rugby site, which helps you break things down and get, very much detail oriented around skills. And as we know, skills are really, really important. But one of the most interesting things that I'd be interested to hear what everybody else approaches this is what about rugby IQ? We talk about rugby IQ quite a bit in the concepts of the kid who gets it, the player who gets it, the coach who gets it, and gets how the game structures, how the game plays. And definitely 15s more so than sevens. It's a thinking game. It's very dynamic. The coach really has very little influence once once kickoff's gone. And the players have to make the calls themselves. They have to think it through. They have to make decisions. They have to make decisions in real time. They can make decisions when, penalties are called or when they have options for lineouts or scrums, all those sorts of things. So how do we approach and teach kids rugby IQ? And it's a semi-rhetorical question. I have an opinion, but I'd love to hear everybody else's as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, I do have some websites for that too that we could talk about in a little bit, but I would imagine they've got to watch rugby, right? Probably more so. You might be able to get accelerated information from maybe a website that points out some certain tactics and strategies, but ultimately the kids just got to watch rugby. That's my opinion. There's a lot of it available now, whether it's on YouTube or on other subscription type TV that's getting relatively affordable and accessible in the U.S. But that's my opinion, Alan. I don't know if anyone has any others.
I think Jeff mentioned it last week as well. The same thing. Sorry, Jeff. It looked like you're about to speak, and I talked over you.
No, I was just going to mention that, I'd always played around Americans until I went and played in Korea, and there were a bunch of expatriates from all the Commonwealth nations and a bunch of French guys too, and they always played a lot of touch, and I could tell that the things they did in the game, I could tell their tendencies because I had played enough touch with them, and I got to understand a lot more about the flow of the game, just player to player and how you react to other players, and particularly when things break down. And I was a forward, so I was always going from set piece to set piece, and I didn't really understand what the other guys were doing. And I don't think we do enough just playing touch. Certainly, if you're a basketball player, I think I was talking to Daniel about this at maybe last weekend. You show up to basketball practice and everybody shoots hoops, and they play a little 1-on-1 or 3-on-3 or something like that, and just to get a sense of the movement and flow of the different in the microcosm. And it's not the rugby IQ writ large to make you a good tactical coach, but to make you a player who has a better feel for the game. Because when you're in a game for the longest time, it takes a long time to learn how to play this game. And if you, certainly for the kids who are approaching it in high school, they really don't understand it over the 4 years they're playing it. They might, after 5 or 6 or 10 years, they might understand it finally, because they just don't have enough opportunities. And I think that's one of the reasons that that right now 7-a-side football, tackle football, gridiron, is becoming so popular, because they work a lot more on a lot of the skill stuff, and it's a lot more freestyle, and they're finding that the kids enjoy it more because it's more like play, and they get a wider field, they get more room, and they get to try things that they otherwise would not try. This was the first time I learned how to dummy somebody. It's not everything. You never let a forward practice dummying. But I learned how to do it. I actually did it in the game, and I'm like, wow, that really worked, and I scored a try. And lumbering old
Wow,
second
good for
row,
you.
scoring a try. But if it weren't for touch, I never would have seen how it worked, because I never would have trusted myself in an actual game to do something like that, because I had never tried it before. And I think we don't do enough of that kind of playing. You see with baseball, the kids show up in practice and they're throwing the ball around to each other. They're playing. There are different games that they can play, just to screw around and learn things in baseball. Pickle is one of them. But when you show up at rugby practice, and most of the kids, if they're throwing a ball, that's great, but they're not playing touch like I saw a lot of the Commonwealth players did. They just naturally took to it, and they played it for the first half hour before warmups every time.
So there's a danger to touch, I think. I mean, so first of all, I should say, yes, I agree. Play. It's the you never learn by watching or exclusively watching, and I think no kid gets better sitting on the bench. You got to get on the field and find out what it feels like. But when I see an over rotation on touch, what I start to see is a few of the the criminal moments of rugby, the creeping too flat, being a little one phase like. And it's the challenge having grown up. I mean, I was taught to play 15s and variants of 15s from 8 years old, and picked up sevens later in life. um and what I see over here with kids starting with sevens and then moving on to 15s is that sevens is a pretty simple game. It's pretty straightforward. Look for the space, run for the space. If you've got speed, you'll do well. If you haven't got speed, it's going to be a little more challenging for you. Whereas 15s is so much more complex and so much more strategic in how you have to think, and where you stand, where you don't stand, I think Chris, you commented last week about being that flanker that chased the fly half. It's that sort of thought process, that there's a level of complexity, I think, that you have to go beyond just touch. And to me, beyond that, that's where I think watching the right games becomes really, really important. I think we've all seen, again, I'm English. Let me slam England for a little bit. If you watch 70s and 80s England, who had some great backs, those guys would not break a sweat during the game because it was 10-man rugby. The pack did everything, and the fly half and the scrum half kicked the rest of the game on, and the wings and the centres really were grossly underutilized. But then at the same time, you had the most amazing Welsh team. France were always totally unpredictable and fantastic. But they were playing and thinking very, very differently. I mean, the ball was being moved around in lots of different directions, and there was a lot of usage of space. And this brings me back to the touch comment. I see this now when we're coaching kids, that the eagerness to get on the ball and the eagerness to be kind of hitting that gain line gets everyone really, really flat. And when you get too flat, you better be really good. And to your point, Jeff, if you can set a great dummy or got a good sidestep, then yeah, you can be very flat. But for the vast majority of people, you need to stand a little deeper. And I think they lose that with touch. And so to me, you've got to blend those two things together. Touch is hugely valuable. There's more. There's more they need to be working out and seeing. And I'm inclined to agree with Chris. Watch real games. Watch the All Blacks in full swing. Barbarians games are equally as good. The real Barbarians, not the Rentham Barbarians. On the
Hey,
grounds that, well, I don't see too many, Rentham's 15s teams playing international quality rugby just yet. That's next month. But no, what I mean is the Barbarians play an
Yep.
attacking game of rugby, and there's a deliberate attempt not to be conservative. And you see this really expansive play and the desire to move the ball. And I think when you see that in action, you see how fantastic the game can be. Then I think that sparks the imagination. Then you start wondering, how do I do that? What lines do I need to run? When do I need to pass the ball? And I think, to me, that's when rugby becomes truly beautiful. I'll stop soapboxing.
No, I was just going to say, I love these ideas, but I also, with an eye to time and selfishness, wanted to potentially pick Chris's brain about the other sites that he had in mind that might provide us with more of this rugby IQ that we're talking about.
Yeah, fair enough. So one, I'll get right after it on Rugby IQ. First of all, Kate, you mentioned one last week, 1014. It's a good starting point. It's really simplifies some of the key strategies, especially for forwards. I'll give you a couple ideas if you're able to pull up. It's a YouTube channel by, I think it's an Irish guy and a Kiwi, and called the 1014. And they have a lot of fun analysis. Some of it is based on statistics about like maybe pack sizes or the seniority teams. But one of them is on just the 1-3-3-1. That's a really good one for a forward to start out with, and understanding the shape and spread of a forward play on the attack. And then they also do a really good video or two on Warren Ball, Warren Gatlin's Wales team, about what he likes to do and how it works. I think 1014 is a good place to start, first of all. And we did mention it a little bit last week, so I'm going to leave it there on 1014. and I will move to I'll move to Squidge, right? Do y'all know Squidge Rugby?
I do not. No.
It's an acquired taste. Please stick with it. So I'll say that it's like I wonder. I don't know if it's under 14 friendly. I don't think Skylar's bothered by it at all. But like every once in a while he'll say something that say he says something that might not be appropriate for the below high school kids. But it's not too bad. But Squidge has really good analysis on his YouTube videos. He talks very fast, but and he's trying to be funny, and he is hilarious at times, but underneath his fast talking and humor is some really good technical analysis, and there might not be anything better than Squid Rugby. And it's really fun, but more than fun, it's good rugby. It's good rugby analysis.
And
Rasmus even said so.
I'm just pulling up the channel, and that links nicely with what Alan was just saying about like watching international games, right? Like these are two channels where they're breaking down those kinds of international games so that they're more accessible to a high schooler or a middle schooler, and they can kind of see how someone made a decision and it opened up space, which is really good for me too, because sometimes like I need to watch those things as a forward, and I'm trying to talk to backs, and like I don't always see what the backs are doing when I'm watching it, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, that's
helpful
a
to
good
me.
point. Yeah, we all struggle with that, the how the other half lives, and I think that is helpful. I'll add one more to that list, and it's called the Dead Ball Area. They also have a YouTube site. I follow them on Twitter, is how I usually get their information, but the Dead Ball Area is another one where they have really good sort of tactical analysis of the game, that I think would be appropriate for most skill levels. And as a matter of fact, if you follow some of those folks on YouTube and Twitter, it's actually starts to snowball, and you see other folks that are trying to start up similar sites. But those three, I think, are probably the top three when it comes to strategy and tactics. On the while we're at it though, while we're talking about this, like the idea is that getting kids to watch international games. I think I mentioned this last week, but how do you get them to watch a bunch of players that they never knew before? How do they don't know what team they're rooting for. They don't know who they're watching and who's bad and who's good. It's a little bit really be really helpful to get them to know who's who, right? And sort of an introduction to the game or the stars of the game. So just watching maybe some of the highlight videos that are out there on rugby, not the biggest hit ones, but I'm talking about the tries of the decade or the tries of the year. Something like that would be a really good way to go. I think for us in our house, all or Nothing, the All Black special, was probably the most impactful. I think I mentioned this last week. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but you got to know the players. You got to know who they were, and you just got to start rooting for them, and you wanted to watch them play, and then you started watching them play, and then I think that was really important in my house anyway for the kids to start watching international rugby. They had to have somebody to root for, and All or Nothing sort of gave them that team to cheer for.
That's why the MLR is so important, and I'm so excited about us getting a team in New England now. And obviously, we're a little selfish; we're here in Massachusetts, but having the Free Jacks almost on our doorstep, it's exactly that. It's identifying with faces and recognizing them, and it's having someone local to support, and more importantly, to commiserate with when they lose. Yeah, and that's I mean that's when you're a true fan, when you stand by as they lose, and you come back hoping next week it's going to be a better experience. So I think yeah, that's going to really help rugby grow in terms of just getting that connection to players and getting that connection to people. And Jeff, building on what you said again, the fact they're doing these fantastic outreaches and they're coaching young kids all the way up through high school, they're all personal connections now. The young kids may not recognize that these people are, donning Eagle shirts and when they're playing internationals, but as they get older and they start to see that, it's such a connection to the team. It's excellent.
Yeah, really well said. And that's actually another good point, is that these games are being more accessible, right? Some of those MLR games were on network TV in the US for the first time, right? And these games are being more and more accessible. Alan, you mentioned, I think in a conversation between us a couple weeks ago, that if you have Comcast Xfinity internet, you have free access to Peacock, which is where all the Premiership games are going to be located. And I think some of the other games are going to be
Six Nations, the European Championship Cup, and stuff like that. You're going to get a lot of good European rugby. Unfortunately, not top 14 and not not Pro 14 either, which
But
is
on
a shame. But
on that note, though, those Pro 14 is available on ESPN Plus, where you have a lot of games. A lot of MLR games are on ESPN Plus. A lot of the other international games that aren't Six Nations are on available on ESPN Plus, and also the Pro 14. So, relatively not modest subscription costs for all of the rugby and all the other sports you want on either some college game. There have been college games on there too, so not too expensive. But the good news about Peacock is free for a lot of us, and that's really great news. But ESPN for not too much, you're getting a lot of sport, and including a lot of rugby on ESPN Plus as well.
actually, I mean, even if you don't get Comcast, I mean, Peacock's only $5 a month, and that gets you access to all the rugby and some other obscure smaller sports like soccer and things like that.
As well as a lot of TV shows from NBC over the for you can watch. I don't know what the NBC shows are, but really old school and NBC shows. Battlestar Galactica, the original, and the new one are both
Yeah,
available.
but Chris, no one's gonna have time to do that because there's so much rugby to watch on it. So there won't be any time to catch up on old shows that you've forgotten. The one thing I will say though, just the counterpoint to trying to get someone to sit down and watch a full-on 15s game. I mean, the problem with 15s, it's less so now, but it certainly was prior to all the quality pitches that we see floating around now. It can get a little turgid at times, a little tied up in the pack, a little slow, a little technical, maybe a better way to word it. And I think you start getting connoisseurs game where when you deeply understand, like I mean, so much forward play experience here, when you know what's going on in the pack, in a ruck, in a maul, inside a scrum, you really can appreciate what's happening. And I think for someone coming in casually, it's a little okay. I don't get what's going on here, and that just there's a bunch of guys leaning on each other or a bunch of gals leaning on each other doing nothing. Why are they doing this? And so that's one of the challenges 15s brings that sevens doesn't. And I think sevens is almost like the highlights of 15s games thrown together. There's so much action going on, and so to me they're the blend. Start on sevens, get hooked, and then I guess it's like learning to drink wine. You start on a wine that just tastes nice, and as you get more sophisticated in your wine tasting, you can move on to the much more complex wines. And to me, 15s is that fantastic vintage complex wine. It's a very special game when you can understand it a little more.
So let me tie in those two things that are kind of floating, that what you're talking about right now, about how it's kind of difficult to jump in and start watching a 15s game without having somebody there, not to spoil it for you, but to explain to you some of the intricacies and how it is very much a chess game. And then earlier we were talking about how getting folks to watch more rugby can be difficult because you need to have access to certain cable shows or whatever, and maybe not everybody has that, particularly well, whatever, not everybody has that. But one resource that I'd like to throw out there that I know we've been and I just haven't been taking enough advantage of it, is the Watch Together channel, or the Watch Together portal, web portal that we use here. And I know Chris, you're a big proponent of it. You and Alan really spend just about every Saturday night. I try to jump in as much as I could. And Jeff, to kind of tying into what you're saying earlier, I I got roped into being the Cub Scout and Boy Scout dad. So I spend a lot of time out in a tent on a Saturday night instead of being able to watch together. So it's in, I'm going to share the screen. It's a portal where whoever hosts it can queue up a number of YouTube, and I think they have Chris. They have access to other web portals, right? It's not just YouTube.
Right. Yeah. It's all the sort of video servers, right? So you wouldn't be able to use ESPN Plus on there, but the other video I can't think of them right now. Daily Motion or something like that might be one, but you understand? Yes, other video servers with pre-recorded videos.
Right, and there's more and more. I mean, I mean, you can mine YouTube right now for a lot of great rugby. Now, if you're looking for specific thing or more recent games, maybe you're not going to do so well. But there's a lot of rugby on YouTube, and if you want to, you know, sit a club together, and perhaps you there's not enough time during practices, you could set up a time for the club to watch together and queue up the stuff you want to present, and then as the moderator, you could pause it, move it, fast forward, rewind, or just pick a particular game that really highlights whatever it is that you're trying to highlight and speak. You using the technology we have right now that we're using right now, you could talk everybody through it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Kate, weren't you at one point weren't you talking about using YouTube or using something or maybe it was the other website we were using earlier to get the kids to watch it ahead of time ahead of a practice?
Yeah, I also do video sessions too. This was something that what a joy of what a silver lining of COVID, that like my dexterity with Zoom allowed me to do things that I would normally do in person. Like I would normally have, you know, 7 minutes of a WPL game queued up, and like maybe we'd watch the 7 minutes together and like pause it. And for the newer players in the room, I'd be saying, like, here's three things, three basic things, like the offsides line, you know what I mean? Like something that I wanted them to kind of pull out and figure out, and they'd be sitting together trying to unpack what we had watched. And with the older, more experienced players, I'd be saying, okay, I paused it at this point, like look at what's happening in field space, identify two different decisions that could be made here. Like, how could you exploit some space? How could you get to a next phase? And so it allows so anyway, my point being that in COVID, instead of being able to be in the room with that to run a video session that way, I got to do it over Zoom, but also record it over Zoom so that because you can go into a Zoom call and share your screen and show the video and record the whole Zoom call and then create it creates a file, and then I could just send different videos out to different groups of kids. And that was I didn't do that all that often, but it felt like a really interesting way to get kids thinking about the game and the space using manageable chunks of video.
Oh, okay. So Zoom is another way of sort of achieving the same thing, is sharing a video that everybody can watch at once while you talk through it.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So there's another resource there that I wasn't even thinking about being able to use Zoom and this watch together. Can be used that way. So that's one thing that I found really a lot of fun.
Top caution: don't use live rugby has been my experience, or at least I'm incapable of actually having an intelligent conversation. Isn't immediately about that precise play at that moment in time during live rugby. So it has to be a recording where you know the outcome already.
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, the other good thing we have is we have the Free Jacks right up the road, and while they were here this weekend, we talked a little bit about having a specific time and event where I could bring the kids to the match and have them have a full rugby experience, both meeting some of the players, watching some of the training ahead of time, and then go sitting in the stands as a group and then watching the MLR game. Particularly because we have a couple players who are locals too, and we need to find that Gronk or that Big Poppy that kids are going to want to emulate and get them attached to the sport in a different way.
That's actually a really good idea. I hadn't thought about this till you just mentioned it, Jeff. But when I was a kid, most of the big rugby stadiums had like a kids section where the children were allowed to go stand. Maybe they had a supervising adult, but it wasn't it wasn't open to adults in general. I wonder if we can talk to the Free Jacks about something like that.
Yeah,
because then we'd have the kids mixing from other clubs and they'd recognize each other from the games, and that'd be cool.
Oh,
and have a friendly at halftime and that kind of stuff too.
That would be even better as well. Because yeah, you could squeeze a sevens a game in 15 minutes, couldn't you? That'd be
Yep.
perfect.
Yep.
That is
Because
such a great
and for
idea.
hockey they do the mini one-on-one during the Bruins, right? And
Yep.
that's I've got a buddy who's a 2-star general, and one of the thrills of his life was that he got to be at the Boston Garden when he was 9 years old in a mini one-on-one.
Cool.
I believe
sounds
that.
awesome.
That was my dream when I was a kid.
I think
Actually,
they
you
had
know-
kids doing drop goals at the Free Jacks games last year, like the games that the Cara Cup games, right?
Yeah, I do remember them doing it at least once. Yeah, drop goal contest. That's right.
Just cute.
So I've got an open thing to talk to Tom Kindly about, and I'm going to urge him to make it a whole program, much like they do with the Bruins and the Celtics and that kind of stuff. Because there's no reason why we shouldn't get the kids involved really at that level. And it's so easy to do it because the pro sport is in its infancy. It's not like they're they have other things taking their time.
And actually, if you think about it, on a full-size rugby field, you could have 2 flag games going at the same time and get them both done in the 15 minutes of half time.
Yeah.
So the adults would get to experience it. We'd have probably 20, maybe 30 kids playing.
Yep.
Hey, we should just take over the Free Jacks and guide them through their commercial introduction to the New England area.
There you go.
I'm sure they're open to the feedback. That's for sure. I will say it. One thing I was thinking that like you were talking about getting kids involved and finding role models, and we have a group of kids, boys and girls, that like follow Super Rugby together, which and now I can't remember what that's streamable on, but it was it's relatively, I think it might be ESPN, but I could be wrong.
It is.
Okay. And so kids would like pick their favorite team and like, and just pick a team and follow it for the season, which has been really fun. But it really always struck me that like, it's so hard to find women's rugby, like high quality women's rugby, because even when it's played internationally, it's often not streamed and it's not recorded or it's not available via YouTube. And, the kids always joke that I show like the same 3 international women's matches from the 2017 World Cup. And like, it's just, it's really hard. It's like the one thing that if I could change anything, I just wish there was more video of international women's rugby, and also that there was more international women's rugby in general. But because it makes such a difference. It makes a difference to be watching people that look like you when you're starting to play a game, to see yourself reflected in the highest levels. So
I think there's more of the women's Premiership rugby from England being shown available on YouTube, because we've watched a few of those on the Watch Together party, and they're this season. No audience, no fans in the crowd.
Yeah, Six Nations. I haven't seen the Premiership rugby, but the Six Nations stuff is great.
Well, this isn't Six Nations. This is definitely Premiership. Sorry, Skylar. I think you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And where to find it.
Yeah. So and I don't know that it's all of them, but the Premier 15's games have all been on YouTube. I think some of the Saracens games have been on the Saracens website and like streamed on like Twitter or something. And then some of the Farah Palmer Cup, which is the New Zealand provincial rugby, some of those games have been on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I hear you. It's still Facebook, like that just still makes my, you're right. I should be grateful that it's even existing, but it's like, I just want a higher quality stream where you can actually see what people are doing. You know what I mean?
The YouTube streams we've been watching are really good. They've been as good a quality as any other stream we've got from YouTube.
That's awesome. Then I will be looking that up.
We're getting there. And actually, I just saw announced yesterday, Rugby Australia did a deal with, I think it was Sky, but it could be Fox Australia, if I'm mistaken. But they did make a deal, and the deal include the women's international as well. Yeah. So coming, I think, right? And I think I did see even something about this. The our USA women are going to play next month in Glendale, and that's going to be available. But like, you're still right. We still got a ways to go, Kate, where that it's maybe not available on ESPN, and with all the video angles and everything. We're getting there. We're getting there.
The Women's Six Nations this year they weren't, but in the past they've been on Flow Rugby. Like I know last year for sure they were all on Flow
That's
Rugby.
right. They were, yeah.
Yeah. Which I had, right? Flow Rugby, but it's like then that's something very specific to rugby, right? Like, and it's you can only really show that if you're in the same room, like with one person logging in.
Yep. Yep, it is. It is a challenge. And you know what? By the way, we're changing the subject pretty well. But one thing we do, I make sure to watch every one of those. I make sure to have YouTube running and everything that they're showing. So if it's on Saracen's TV or if it's on Twitter, it's on a computer somewhere in this house getting watched. So make sure that people know that people are watching those games. And I think that's what we all need to do is show the world that people are interested in women's rugby. And so click on them, watch them, get the views up. And that's what we need to do.
Oh, so that's
That's
not an
true.
invitation over
That's
to your
true.
house, Chris, but that's a command to go and make sure you're streaming the game on your own. First I thought that, hey, it's all come round. We're watching rugby, but I was like, no, don't come round. Fire up as many laptops as you got at home to watch it.
Fire it up on every TV. I mean, I just want to show support and get as many viewers as we can on those videos. I love to see the numbers going up, and I'm so disappointed when the numbers aren't. Hey, in the interest of time, I do have a couple other at least websites I think I want to get through, and a couple different more categories. One, can I just give a couple honorable mentions, and then I want to switch to news and other types of like informational websites, if I could, Alan.
Absolutely.
So first of all, honorable mention as Rugby Coach Weekly and Sport Plan. They actually have pictures of drills and some instructions, right? So if you want to drill, it's not a video. I don't think they're videos. They're just little. Little diagrams where you can go check out some drills. So you might want to check that out. Rugby Strength Coach, if people are into that, there are websites. Rugby Strength Coach is probably the most known if your kids are ready for that. And Rugby Pass, I actually want to pause on for a second. Rugby Pass is pretty big. It is so first of all, it's where a lot of people in the world, and particularly in I don't know where, Thailand, Hong Kong, Singapore, get their rugby through Rugby Pass, kind of like we get it through ESPN or Peacock. They get it through Rugby Pass. And then, but also they have a ton of videos and a ton of videos with maybe like interviews, informational sessions. And one thing that I really want to call attention to is this series called The Season that's gone on to a school in New Zealand or Australia over the course of the last few years and actually done a spotlight on a certain rugby mad school and see the kids kind of deal with school and rugby and their games and their training sessions and their weightlifting sessions and the whole thing. It's really really interesting, and so I think it's probably worth a watch for those of you who haven't watched it yet.
Very cool.
I am going to improve my audio, so hold on a second, and then we're gonna switch to. So give me a second here, and we're gonna switch to just a couple websites that I want you all to know where we get information and news.
While he's doing that, I'll say one thing. So I have I'm sure everyone has playlists of different YouTube clips that they've saved into their personal, library. And I have a couple saved from the channel called Rugby Scrum Skills, which is very specific. So, I mean, it's just kind of a shout out to if you're looking for something very specific that visually breaks down different positioning or different movements off of the scrum. That might be a YouTube channel to check out for something very specific to the scrum.
Very cool. That would have been something. That's probably really big for backs too, right? When we talked about earlier, there's a lot of backs who don't know how to coach the scrum. I can imagine that being really helpful for folks who need help in that area.
We should give it to a bunch of international referees. They could learn how to referee the scrum as well. That would help. Or is that too controversial? Did I say that out loud?
Brilliant. I want to make sure that we all know, if you want news on youth and high school rugby in America, you should be checking out the Goff Rugby Report. I think we all know Alex Goff and his Rugby Report. That's a free website where he's always posting information about what's going on at USA Rugby, what tournaments are happening, which ones are coming soon, which ones just passed over the weekend. Really interesting information for those of you who are who interested in what else is going on out there. I find it really helpful to sort of identify what's happening, what's happening in the rugby landscape in America. It's helped me sort of identify some opportunities for my kids. So that's probably one of the biggest things I got out of it. But it's also really informational, especially the Eagle stuff as well. And then he mostly covers boys rugby, but he does do some girls rugby. But there's another website called the Rugby Breakdown. It does end up being subscription based, but really good coverage of girls and women's rugby in the United States, and a bit outside the United States, but primarily the United States. Something you might want to be aware of. I think some of us are, but something might want to be aware of in the case you want to know information about our rugby landscape. And then the last one, actually, we had Karen Fong Donahue on our website, on our podcast a few months ago. But she has a website called The Rugger's Edge. It gives you information about college, upcoming camps, other sort of clinics, and just a lot of information about college rugby. And so when you get kids that are that age, it is a good resource for you, or a good place to point your parents in the case they want more information about college rugby and upcoming camps and clinics. So that is those are my honorable mentions.
I think we're all speechless, Chris.
Ooh,
You guys must literally be, every member of the family independently watching a single channel and reading all their websites just to get through it all.
We had a lot of time during the COVID lockdown. I actually have a list of YouTube channels that maybe I'll post for Daniel to leave for folks if they want to check it out. But those are those don't even they don't
Yeah,
make it to the honorable mention. We've got to
I,
get moving on.
I'm definitely getting overwhelmed with all the stuff that you guys are throwing at me. I'm trying to capture it all. I decided to just create a resource channel because all the stuff that we're using here to communicate to one another, we're probably over time we're going to lose it. So I just created a resource channel up top, and I tried to copy to there as much as as much as you guys have been throwing out. Which, I mean, this doesn't even cover the stuff from last week, so I'll maybe go back and throw it in there. And then hopefully, other people in the community, if it grows in that direction, they can discuss and add their own, because that's quite a bit. I think the last thing that I would use, and I think it's fairly straightforward. I think everybody understands this, is as much as all these different portals, all these different books, all these different podcasts, all this different material that you can consume is pretty amazing. I it has its place. I've never found I found a substitute to just being able to get out there and spending time with people that you enjoy spending time, or more that you recognize are further down the road, or not even further down the road. You can learn a lot from also being able to see somebody else and how they're coaching. So just spending time with other coaches or other people that are passionate about the sport or any hobby. Um, it's that's where I get my most enthusiasm. It recharges my batteries. It also I learn a great deal in doing exactly what we're doing right here. I mean, you folks are absolutely amazing, and I would trade any book, any website, anything for being able to hang out with you and do exactly what we're doing, either at the pub or in this virtual pub right here. This is just this. I'm tickled pink by the fact that I get to hang out with you guys, and share ideas and learn from you guys. You are like my best resources, and I would recommend to anybody, if you feel shy about going out there, you're a new coach, and approaching somebody that you see a little bit more established than you. I cannot imagine any coach worth their salt that would turn you away, that would in any way not feel happy, more than happy, to be able to just hang out with you and share with you in any of the knowledge that they have. So I guess that's the one thing that I would say is, me, for resources, are people that I respect and I just absolutely love hanging out with. So, to you guys, I absolutely love my time that I get to share with you guys.
Oh, what a heartfelt moment there, Daniel.
I'm so verklempt I can't speak.
So that
I
that's
was
a
going to say though, Daniel, there's in taking everything you said the way it's been. So, but thank you. But the same token, I think if you want to take it a bit further and go beyond, I do think these online resources are excellent, and I do think you can go to kick yourself up a notch in the coaching quality. Looking beyond just your friends hanging out with. But it doesn't. I mean, your comments about approach any coach, I think, is about right, because that's what rugby's always been about. It's always been a community, and communities support each other. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, never. I would say never. I encourage any new coach out there, or any coach out there, to just approach another coach if you have any questions, or not even questions, just to see how it is that they do it, because everybody has a slightly different way of doing it, and everybody probably figured out their own little trick about X, Y, and Z. And I encourage anybody to go out and participate. In selections camps. Selections camps always need assistant coaches, or more people that can help coordinate, people that can help, make the thing run easier. So if you see there's a clinic of any sort, happening, and you feel that maybe it's not for you because it's for youth, or it's for the players, just raise your hand and show up, volunteer, and you'll get to see how it's run. You get to see how another coach kind of runs their program. That can be very, very, very valuable. And then afterwards, you can sit, and chat with them. Hey, why'd you do X, Y, and Z? Or, hey, I liked how you did, so and so. Can you tell me about how it really works? So that's what I would encourage. If you have the time, if you have the resources, plug into events that other coaches are running, and see if you could volunteer to help, or just stand on the sideline and watch.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, every winter for the Myro youth side of things, the Wolfhounds have been hosting a camp inside Union Point, and they have become quite acquisitive of coaches, and that's given us an opportunity to literally collaborate with all the other clubs. And each person gets a pod, or each coach group gets a pod, and we coach a single topic, like passing or tackling or running lines, that sort of thing. And as a consequence, you get to hang out with other coaches, you get to cross pollinate on ideas, and you get to see all these players from all these clubs getting the benefit of every single, coaches from all the clubs as well. So it's really good. And I think, to your point, Daniel, it just helps us all share. We all help to improve the quality of the game across the whole state, and that's better for everybody as a consequence.
And that's a perfect example. You're absolutely right, because everybody,
Yeah.
all the coaches just show up and help and participate and help, and yeah, they throw you little peewees at you, slightly older ones all the way up to high school. So your pod, you're going to have to be able to run, a clinic basically for every single age group. And if you're not sure how to do it, there's a million coaches there you can run to and be like, help, help, help. What can I do here? Or if not, just watch, or help, be an aid, just go. And if you don't want to, just go and watch from the sidelines. That's always been incredibly, incredibly helpful. Just don't be shy to do that.
And it's all in 10 or 15 minute increments, so you can just about cope with those first graders.
Right, Jeff. You should be able to handle those little kids that are uh, just
Well,
don't listen.
Jeff's already admitted that he's actually a master, that he's been doing this for a while, having run an entire
Exactly.
den. But 15 minutes a week was as much as I could cope with. They taxed my skills to this absolute maximum. But when they
Excellent.
got it, it was fun.
Absolutely. All right, so I think we hit a lot of really awesome resources. Is there anything else? Anything we didn't, we forgot, we overlooked? Anything that didn't fit well that we can kind of throw in here? Because I think we're running a little long here.
Yeah, I did have two things on my list that one didn't fit and one I just skipped over. Um, just one other YouTube channel that's been really good is Rugby Bricks. Rugby Bricks has actually detailed tutorials on kicking, several detailed tutorials on kicking, and a really good masterclass on passing by Aaron Smith. But that's not all it has. But I'm just saying, hey, if you wanna, the level of detail in Rugby Bricks has been really, really solid. It's by actually I'm forgetting the guy's name, Peter Breen. He's a Highlanders player from a few years ago, and his videos are really good. And then one more, another podcast that started quite a while before us, called Rugby Coaches Corner. A guy by the name of Andy Klima. He's an Australian living in Canada, and he for quite some time had frequent periodic podcasts with interviewing guests and talking about some really interesting things. I think most of those guests will stand the test of time. If you wanted to check out a different podcast, I think Andy Klima has been Rugby Coaches Corner, was doing it quite well for a while. Haven't heard anything from in a while, but it's some pretty good stuff on his podcasts. That's it. That's all I got. I'm tapped out now. Just kidding. I actually do have more, but that's all I'm going to talk about.
Fantastic. All right. Anything from anybody else? Or we're ready to call it.
What's next week, Daniel? What's next time?
Yeah, in 2 weeks. So yeah, what we have scheduled for 2 weeks from now is a discussion around the assistant coach. Basically, just a roundtable. How do you use an assistant coach? How do you know you need an assistant coach? How do you promote? How do you get them? Just anything and everything that you can share around the topic of an assistant coach. I know it's kind of like a gray area. Do they sprout just out of the turf? When do they get anointed with the term, the title of assistant coach? What do you have to do to coax, or do they just sort of appear? Just anything and everything around an assistant coach and how valuable they are, and how important it is to be able to help them become better coaches if that's what the direction they want to go in, or how to be able to integrate them, because it's well, and I'm jumping in too much into the detail for it, but just anything and everything around the assistant coach. Does that make sense?
Sounds great.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything we wanted to get, or at least everything we were able to cram into this one, actually 2 shows. So unless anybody has anything else, should we just call it a night?